had a different course. I think if you look at all the empirical data, Hillary Clinton was winning this election going away in the final, leading up into the final 2 weeks. She lost it unquestionably in the final week, and in some states she lost it on the final day. If you look at a state like Florida, 70% of the vote was in before Election Day, and she was up by 247,000 votes.
Yeah.
At that point, she had a 4-point lead. She ended up losing Election Day by 13 points and lost the state by 1 point.
But I mean, how can you connect that to James Comey? As we all learned painfully, polls were wrong during this election. So how can you connect what happened 11 days beforehand to a poll the day of?
I actually think the polls were right going into the last week, and then there was an extreme tightening in the last week. But we have gone back and looked, and we've seen in our qualitative research and focus groups and whatnot, with respect to WikiLeaks, a lot of people, average voters, conflated that with the issue of her server. And so it all combined for a perfect storm of a bad swirl of information where every story about WikiLeaks, which of course had to do with the Russian intrusion with respect to John Podesta's emails, was being conflated as another story about her email server and Jim Comey's new reopening of the investigation, so to speak. And we took a look at some of the news coverage in the final day, the final days of the campaign. Roughly 40% of everything that was written about and said about Hillary Clinton in the final days of the campaign was about emails. And so if you show me that there's a huge swing in the electorate's mood, we lost late deciders in Wisconsin, just to take another state, by 29 points. And she only lost it by a few thousand votes. And so if you tell me that there's such a huge swing in the final week compared to the mood of the electorate heading into that final week, given the saturation coverage of Jim Comey's letter, you can't tell me that that didn't have that impact.
Do you think that, as the Wall Street Journal says in an editorial, that James Comey should resign?
Well, look, I think that's a question he has to ask himself. I'm not going to join in with that call by the Wall Street Journal today. I think there are serious questions that need to be answered about the ability of Jim Comey to effectively lead that organization going forward. When Jim Comey defends his actions, which unquestionably broke from DOJ protocol in speaking about a case in a public manner, and he justifies them by saying that he worried that if he didn't do that, that there would be leaks coming out of his New York field office, that tells me he doesn't have enough confidence in his own ability to prevent his own rank-and-file agents from engaging in misconduct. So if he's willing to publicly admit that he doesn't have a grip on his own bureau, how can he have confidence to lead this organization going forward and restore its reputation? So that's a question he needs to ask himself, but I'd be willing to say, let's wait for this IG investigation to take place. Let's let them reach a definitive conclusion about the appropriateness of Jim Comey's actions and then make a decision about a question like that.
Does Secretary Clinton believe that James Comey should resign?
Again, I think that she thinks that I don't speak for her anymore, I should say, and I'll let her speak for herself in due course when she deems it appropriate. But I think that all of us involved in the campaign believe that this investigation is appropriate, should be allowed to proceed unimpeded. You know, technically, the Trump administration, when they come in, they could try to scotch this review if they want to. Historically, an incoming administration would allow the existing Inspector General to remain for at least some period of time.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why this review was announced with such fanfare yesterday was because the IG is trying to put some public pressure for it to not be staunched when the Trump administration comes in. I think it's very important, and we as the public should all be interested in holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire to not interfere with this review, let it go forward, and then let's see what they have to say about the appropriateness of Jim Comey's actions.
Brian Fallon, thank you very much for being on New Day.
Thank you, Allison.
All right. It is easy to take a vote. It is hard to make a change. House Republicans moving ahead today in their efforts to dismantle Obamacare. But do they have a plan to replace the health care law? Not ideas, not concepts, but ways to replace the coverage in a way that will be better for you. We're going to talk to the architect of the Affordable Care Act to show you why it ain't as easy as it seems.
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know how to cover almost anything, even a rodent ride-along.
All right, buddy. Don't forget anything.
I won't, Dad.
Good morning, Captain Rod here. It's pretty hairy out on the interstate. Traffic is literally crawling, but there is some movement on the east side overpass. Getting word of another collision.
It happened December 14th, 2015, and we covered it. Talk to farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Why pause a spontaneous moment? Cialis for daily use treats ED and the urinary symptoms of BPH. Tell your doctor about your medicines and ask if your heart is healthy enough for sex. Do not take Cialis if you take nitrates for chest pain or Adempas for pulmonary hypertension, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Do not drink alcohol in excess. To avoid long-term injury, get medical help right away for an erection lasting more than 4 hours. If you have a sudden decrease or loss of hearing or vision or an allergic reaction, stop taking Cialis and get medical help right away. Ask your doctor about Cialis.
Next level layering. Right now until January 16th at Men's Warehouse, take 60% off all outerwear and sweaters. And complete your look with buy one, get one free on other great items throughout the store. Men's Warehouse.